All right, I'll call order the Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting at 3 p.m. We have, not only do we have a quorum, we have a giant quorum. Approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
Sure.
All those in favor? Aye, aye, aye. No public comment that I know of. I don't see anybody here. Mike, we just want to jump into the first one. FY20 capital potential projects.
Yes.
Not currently
Not currently.
listed.
And I'll just offer this, and Matt can probably elaborate. Heck, he probably could too. One of the strategic goals of the board, select board, is a bike pedestrian connection from the ferries to Mid Island, defined as 6 Fairgrounds Road. So one of the capital projects that we talked about as part of achieving that goal would be Newtown Road. Having a pedestrian and traffic calming element along that corridor, and that would help ensure the link, and that would feed into a system of sidewalks that would actually achieve the goal. So that's one project that currently is not on the FY20 capital plan that we would look to add. And again, it's part of a portfolio of goal number 2, I think it is, of this
Right.
strategic goal number 2.
We actually looked at that during the,
It was a state funding program.
what was it?
Complete Streets.
Complete Streets. That was one of our top ones.
Yeah.
Right. We ended up going with Sparks, but that was our number 2 or 3 was
Right.
Newtown.
And the difference for Sparks was the direct linkage to the schools.
Right. Matt, thank you for being here, by the way. Thanks for jumping in on this. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
So that falls in line with many things, the strategic planning for select board, what we talked about for 6 months during that process, Complete Streets.
So Mike, just take me through, just re-ground me for a minute. We've gone through and we have this list of probably 20 total projects that we think make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Are they anywhere in the future years of planning, capital planning, like in 2022, 23, 24? Are they laid out to fall in line with the long-term capital planning?
Yes and no. Yes, there are identified needs. Some of the sidewalk improvements are in the sidewalk plan. There are a few of those that aren't identified. They're just under this umbrella called sidewalk improvements. And we are gonna put in another sidewalk request this next year for some certain areas. But that wouldn't really address some of the projects you're talking about. I think that you're talking about Prospect Street and
Right.
those kinds of things. They're under this umbrella of sidewalk improvements that if there's funding available, they'll get implemented.
Is it worth, not today, but as one of our exercises over the next 6 months, to try to lay them out in like a 10-year plan and say this is what it would take if you wanted to do them over 10 years? Is it worth doing that to show both the amount of energy, time it takes, and money, so people can see that, you know, it is going to take time, but the reality is 3 years from now we hope to address Sparks Ave as an example.
Is that can I ask a question to your question?
Yeah.
Is that something that this advisory committee could do to help NPDDC planning, transportation? Right? Because we're always looking for things for us to put our time into to help.
And to really try to help them how to prioritize and kind of bring some reality to what does it take to deliver them. You know, there's engineering, permitting, land rights, and then delivery of the project. In some of these, like Pleasant Street, you know, there's land rights issues and there's engineering, and as much as we'd all like to have it tomorrow, there's the reality of getting all those things done.
Harvey, what are you gonna say?
Well, isn't that kind of what this is?
It is, but doesn't have all the things we've talked about on it.
Right.
I guess, so that's my question.
Does it address sidewalks? Does it, I mean, some of them.
At the very, very top, you'll see a multi-use path improvements, and then underneath that, sidewalk, crosswalk, ADA improvements. And then you go across there, you can see how it's right about $1 million with some kind of inflation built in. So that's where those kinds of small projects would live. You asked about the buildability and try to pick up organize a routine or a program that we done on an annual basis, a linear feet of sidewalk, square yards of sidewalk that could potentially get done. I actually just, right before this meeting, talked with the DPW, and that's something we try to get a hold of. We're still spending the phase 1 money in the phase 2 funds that we have that were initially approved.
And how far do you think they'll get with that?
We were talking about the Pacific Club area and some sections of Main Street for this fall as something that's doable, but again, would require, you all participate in these listening sessions that we did here in this room for Broad Street and South Water Street. A lot of you did. Same kind of routine, but focused around the Main Street Pacific Club area, Club Car area is the next area. It's hard. You never know when there's going to be this thing, this mystery event that happens that's going to sidetrack stuff that gets you off the routine, like a sewer breakage. It's unanticipated, one of these things that happen. We could give that a shot. We absolutely have all the needs identified and they're quantified, but putting them on a schedule, we can take a stab at that. I'm not sure what the expectation is on how solid that recommendation would be. There would need to be some elasticity with some kind of program like that, but it could be a guide for like the next 5 years, something like this. But we probably have 10 years worth of projects, and then probably have like a leftover amount that would probably, okay, this is beyond 5 years. Here's what we want to focus on in the first 5. Here's the next 5. That kind of thing potentially could get done. One of the questions I didn't have answered is how much money is actually left in that phase 1. So getting cost under control. I mean, that was a big part of the experiment, right? We can quantify brick, but realistically, once we bid the stuff out, start doing it, how long would that money stretch? So that we have to get a handle on that, and that would help guide all that recommendation.
Yeah, and I don't wanna hijack your agenda, I just was, you know, I worry that if you don't have some semblance of focus and priority, that you end up trying to boil the ocean and a lot of things don't get done because you're busy boiling the ocean.
Yeah, things like these strategic goals, sidewalk improvements between the ferries, in the areas of ferries, that definitely narrows down the universe of projects going on. Establishing a linkage, bike pedestrian linkage between downtown and the Mid-Island. That's another guide. There are projects that fall outside of that, so obviously those aren't the priority if they're falling outside, but that needs to be well understood.
Right.
That we're focusing on priority areas. That's the
Right,
whole
but
point of establishing a goal.
just to your point, I'm pushing back to say that
Yeah.
we're almost done with the connections to the ferry, right? And so we've talked about that for 3.5 years. So what's the next big priority, right? So it's, even if it was that simple to say, in a bucket form, what's the next big step? It took us a long time to get this far.
No, you're absolutely right. But part of that phase 1 also included the Main Street rebuild and included a connection to the town parking lot. So it's the ferries and the Main Street and the town parking lot. There's almost 3 areas that we wanted to tackle. I don't have a good answer on if there's funding left over and there needs to be supplemental funds for that phase. I just don't have an answer on that. But that could be a potential one. It's like, where do we stand now, and what's our next 2 or 3 year plan? That's.
I think that makes sense, because there's things that have to be done before the money and before the work.
Yeah.
So you wanna keep, I'm sort of agreeing with David, you wanna keep those things in the process, so when, 2 years from now, when we're done with this, we don't take a 3-year break waiting for the, I would think you wanna keep the momentum going.
Sure.
Yeah,
A lot of the self-evaluation to where you stand with your money. Did we estimate correctly at the beginning?
And how can we help with that process?
Yeah,
You know, I mean, how can
exactly. That's what I'm trying
we
to
not be
get at.
annoying, not nag you, but just saying, we're on top of it, we're ready for the next one, and we have something on our agenda items for the next 6 months, like updates, and
Yep.
we go out and do the site visits, or whether we prioritize, or,
And we build public support. I mean, if people,
Yeah.
I know a couple of people are new to the room, but, we spent 1.5 years getting the finance committee to accept that there needs to be a line item for sidewalks, and we arbitrarily picked a number, and now we have to obviously visit that, but what's the next box, and is the 1.5 million the right dollar amount? And those are all things we talk about now, so 3 years from now, there's funding in place, because that's how government works.
this is a total side note. I had a bike tour with a family this weekend, and the daughter and the father were personal injury attorneys. This came out at the end. She said, we were taking our stroller downtown. It's so bad. You have a liability nightmare on your hands. They're from New York. And I said, well, we're putting $1 million a year into sidewalks. She said, that's it? That was her reaction. I didn't go forward because I didn't want to get political or explain our capital process and how far we've come in those 3 years. But that was her quick take on it.
So we start handing out a notice at the ferry, use sidewalks at your own risk?
Yeah.
It's implied.
I think it's pretty good. I mean, relatively to New York City, it's not a lot of money, but it's
Right.
It's not a lot. It's not an amount you
Yeah.
sneeze at.
That's what I said to her. I said, it's a lot for us. We're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I have this huge fantasy that we turn this into a process that works and just repeats itself. So when all of us step off the board, the next board knows our job is the pre-planning. It's building the public understanding, building the priority. And I don't want to argue with Rob about engineering. That's his job, right? So you turn the project over to him, he engineers it, he procures it, he gets it built. But while he's doing that, we have to know what the next list is. And we kind of need to know what the list is in 3 years because it takes that long to line up the parts. And so I was only asking, even if we didn't share it publicly, do we need a list of what we're thinking about as part of just a standing agenda item?
We could look at the network of sidewalk improvements that are out there and see how they align with the. I need to do this anyway, so it's instead of just doing one map for one committee, I can just do one map for a couple of different groups that can share.
Yeah.
So identifying all the capital requests for sidewalk improvements within that goal category of town to mid-island. Try to understand that, and we can take a look at those,
Mhm.
and even the ones that are outside that boundary, but then we can use that at these, the board's, strategic planning meetings as well, so it has a couple of different uses.
But final point on it, should we include in that list the maintenance or expansion and improvement of bike path, right? Because we do both.
Mm-hmm.
We lately were really focused on sidewalks, right? And so the question is, should we be, I'd love to be the voice reminding them, hey, these bike paths need maintenance, these bike paths need improvements, or this one, needs better lighting or a bench or water. It doesn't always have to be, more pavement. Sometimes it's something else the bike path needs,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know there are several bikers in the room. I'm not all that big on biking. I walk, but I walk enough of them to know they all could use improvements. And how's DPW supposed to know that? Wait for the complaint?
Yeah.
Well, you brought the transportation, regional transportation plan, you bring it to us and we look through it, we help prioritize and,
Yeah.
we come up with, hey, Orange Street, Washington, and Wynn Street are our top priorities for bikes, for bike paths.
And if we need to do another pavement evaluation for the pavement management plan that the DPW uses, if that needs to be updated, honestly, I don't know where that stands. It was kind of I think they're gonna fill the position at DPW pretty soon with, the person that would be their role is developing the pavement management plan, so,
From your lips to God's ears.
okay. I don't know that. I don't know the answer to the question, but yeah, taking a look at that management plan there for bike pavement, bike path pavement. Because there is a line item on there, bike path maintenance, half 200,000-ish for some out years.
Do you think,
So what is that? Does anybody know what that we'd like to, if we were in charge, what would we recommend the priorities would be for that money?
so I think that could be on an agenda, or agendas.
Yeah.
What is it spent on now? Like, what's the yearly?
Yeah, so I kind of have written down what you said, public understanding, prioritizing, next list, but then cost updates of where are we now with phase 1, phase 2. So then we have a sense of, that's how much that actually cost.
Yep.
So Pleasant Street, if you do that, we can have an idea in our head. My question, Matt, always is how can this advisory committee, right? We're just advising, how can we help? And not be a negative.
Fundamentally, if it turns into like sidewalk should be $3 million a year, the voices from this group to carry over to like a capital program committee, to a finance committee, to a board, a select board meeting, that there's a huge amount of value to that. In knowing that it was discussed and supported, that's huge value. Selecting projects that are prioritized because they align with particular goals that you all believe in, that's also a help, because you see some reasons for why you support it. So that from that standpoint, yes, you're correct. There are some information needs that exist. Pavement management plans, status of accounts that are funding some of these ongoing projects. That's probably a to-do item for staff, and I'll just work with DPW and maybe it's be healthy to have Rob here at the next meeting or meeting after that, just to.
Maybe he comes every 6 months or something, just kind of now, he's taking what we are helping identify and turning it into real work, so,
Yeah.
I don't think he has to be here every meeting, right? But
We originally had
But an
our
update.
very first couple meetings, if you remember, Sylvia was coming. Like, we had a
Yeah.
DPW person here who could just kind of focus us when we start to wonder about things.
And maybe this new hire that'll be Rob's assistant, that will hopefully help do that.
We pop in time to time.
Yeah.
So this is, all the stuff isn't really on the agenda. We'll sit down and try to figure out how to get the
Yeah,
time frame on the next
Yeah.
couple agendas to get this on?
yeah, that sounds good. That'd be a good strategy for the next just gets to the summer, because honestly, there's so much going on, it'd be good to have some kind of organizing,
Yep.
3-month plan for
Mhm.
getting through the summer.
Right.
Um,
I mean, I think we can almost do the agendas for the next 3 months.
Yeah,
I mean, not post them, but so we all have an idea of what we're doing.
yeah, and maybe Megan and I will sit down with you at some point and just, we'll try to do that.
Okay. Any other things with the FY20 capital projects besides Newtown? What's going on there?
That's not already on the plan, that's, I think that's really the big one that's not
Okay.
on the plan. Perhaps adding in-town bike path feature phases, if we want to fund that locally instead of waiting for tip funds, we'll talk about that tonight.
Right.
But that's gonna be an out year, and I don't know if there's patience for that, or if we should pop that in for 2020 and just say, listen, we're just gonna do this locally. But that would be the other add, at least Orange Street phase, at least.
Right.
So those would be the 2 items, Newtown Road and Orange Street phase of in-town bike path. That's,
I would have loved to have the Orange Street 5 years ago. Even today driving, you know. On the way here, 3 people on bikes on the sidewalk on the wrong side of the road going against traffic. And so I'm already thinking like, man, we really, it's May.
Yeah.
We really need Orange Street widened. My question for you, Dave, those 4 or 5 poles in front of Marine Home Center, I know we need engineering and all that. How difficult would that be, in your most humble opinion, of getting those moved underground, something, to be able to widen that road? If money wasn't an issue,
If
can it
money-
be done?
Yeah, first off, it can be done. I know you guys are having a discussion about the L8. I think the opportunity the town's missing, and I've stayed completely out of this. National Grid's tried to pull me in it. I don't want to be involved, and I got enough political crap in my life. There's always an opportunity when a utility is placing main line to get improvements be part of the overall plan. Matt, what you may not be aware of, they were willing to put Washington Street underground as part of the route, right? Big deal, and it's about a $4 million project that might cost to come down $500,000 or $600,000. So there's always that opportunity.
Have they offered that?
No, they're not gonna offer, you have to ask specifically for it. They have brought up the fact that they could change what it would take to put Washington Street underground if they're allowed to follow the path that they're proposing. That was the last meeting, I was in 6 months ago,
Right.
when I decided I didn't wanna be part of that anymore. It looked a little too messy for me. But to answer your question, the other choice, if you wanted to redesign that, the right answer, which might irritate the neighbors, you could move those 8 poles across the street to the other side, actually relatively easily, and that's probably 18 months worth of work. You would hire them, you pay them to do the engineering, they'd relocate just as they came to Marine Home Center, jump over just past Hatches onto the other side of the road, and run for about 7 poles and then cross back over before they get to Rotary, and that would work very easy for them to get the poles out of the way. That's a very simple solution.
Versus
And
trying to go underground.
you would say that you were doing a highway improvement project, and there's a certain amount of that would be refundable, and some of it you would have to pay. But it would be in the order of magnitude is well under $1 million to move those 7, 8, 10 poles. Go ahead.
Haven't we paid quite a bit of money over the decades into a fund for precisely doing this?
No, what you did is,
Am I confusing that with the
you are and you aren't. We paid into a fund to underground the law requires that it's a defined area. And the 2 areas were downtown, the core district, right to a very specific pole number, and all of that's done. And then the other is the village of Wisconsin. And so those two projects are completed. And we could always opt that route as well, which is you can go designate an area. You go to the DPU, you make an application, they tell the utility they have to do it, they establish a 2% deduction out of everybody's bill until they collect enough money to pay it and do it. And it has to be defined, it has to be have a schedule, that's another way to do it. But you could relocate those poles. The cheapest, simplest way is to relocate 6 or 7 of them to the other side of the road, and you could fit in a bike lane.
Further back, so we can still widen the
Yeah,
road,
so
not middle of the sidewalk.
basically what you would do is cross just after Henry's, and you would just kick the poles back, and you would run down the street, and then you have to deal with Marine and decide where's your property line, which is interesting. I think it's actually on the inside of their curb.
Yeah, we've got that figured out.
I actually think
Finally.
you've got more room than you think you have.
Right. Okay.
And then you get to the town property, which obviously by our island home is more than ample room through there. So there's 2 solutions that could be done. One will take you 5 or 6 years to get it underground. The other is probably 18 months.
Okay.
You know, no different than the bike path, the Hummock Road bike path, right? How long that took from when we really decided we were moving poles.
Well, one thing this group maybe could do is look at what, because if you have to make a specific area, we could look at what areas should be underground. Which ones would be good for house moving, not that a lot of house moving goes on. New houses come out, but not like the old houses don't seem to be moving much anymore. You know, which poles of those are key intersections that should be undergrounded, and there's probably a couple roads, if we looked at it, that, you know, sort of Cliff Road is one I go up and down all the time, none of the sidewalks are usable, because you've got the poles, you've got the, either cars parked on them, or poles and, what do you call it, the water, you've got the hydrants. So you either have hydrants or poles or cars, so there's, you know, people
Right.
have to walk in the road, so it's kinda.
So you're talking about his suggestion of like going to DPU and trying to find a designated
Well,
area?
if we
put 'em in
designated
bills.
certain areas that said, okay, these are the ones we'd like to get underground at first for biking benefits and for pedestrian benefits, and here they are, and went to the selectmen or whoever we have to go to, and they go to DPU.
Mhm.
Well, the
Start
way
that
it worked,
again.
I mean, again, you can go that route. The other route is to go directly to the utility and get a budget first.
Yeah.
So you know, are you willing, because the utility has a bound, everybody wants to complicate it. Their job is simple. They have to provide the least cost solution to the ratepayer, which is overhead lines. So if you wanna do more than that, someone has to pay. So communities pay to do that. We pay to do that downtown. And so the first question is always, well, how much is it gonna cost? And the utilities for about $100,000 will give you detailed engineering plans and costs to do an area, a neighborhood, a street. And then you have the question most politicians wanna know, how much does it cost?
Politicians.
Decision makers, how's that?
Now, we can talk about that. We can continue that conversation on
Mhm.
that whole process, and you and I'd wanna own it from, you know, here to
Mhm.
select board.
So let me, but one other real small thing, you said hydrants. The hydrants, when Bob and I had this pet project going on, we were trying to remove every 6 months one hydrant. So we did Orange Street, we just got another one which happened because of the sewer, which was the yacht club. There's one up in front of Land Bank's property on Liberty Street, which are gonna move onto Land Bank's property. Guys, my advice to you is, the water company does a lot of maintenance. We slowly, quietly identify, and if say to, when you're working in that area, they just need help getting permission to move it onto someone's property.
Right.
And so, the one on Orange Street, we went to the owner of the property, we got them an easement, we did all the legwork to get a hydrant moved 5 feet. It took 2 years of talking to the owner to get the easement. The problem is, that, you know, you're not gonna have any big bangs, but you just quietly get them done. You know? Those wear you out.
If we can chip away at it,
You can.
chip away at it.
And
here and
sometimes
there.
that's still success.
Yeah, it's a long game. All right, so this is all really great information to get us through, you know, through the summer into the fall, how we can be effective as advisory committee. We gonna move on to Gardner Street? Any other comments?
No, I was just gonna say facetiously that an Indian bureaucratic tried to chip away at it.
Gardner Street, options to improve bike and pedestrian accommodations. Man, it only seems like there's only one option to improve it.
What's that, one way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know how else to, can't move homes, can't widen the road, right?
You could, that's how they redesigned Paris, I guess, just
Well, I guess we could,
run a
but,
bulldozer through the area you want the new road to go.
As New York.
well, Lucy Dillon was here
Yeah.
last 2 meetings ago and read the same thing she
Right. I read
sent to
that.
us, yeah.
Yes, and, you know, for Matt and for Dave, I live at the bottom
Mhm.
in that plain Victoria you run into.
Yep.
Right.
And I am, like Lucy, think it would be a terrible idea to make it one way, as we already have a big problem with people speeding. I'm just amazed that we haven't had any pedestrians hit recently, as far as I know.
Well, can I stop you there, because I feel like the one way would stop the speeding, if there were speed tables there. I don't think
If
speeding.
there were speed tables,
Mhm.
you mean speed bumps?
Well, speed tables are a little bigger and a little wider, like the one on Lily.
Well, why not have that for two-way? I mean,
Yeah.
I think Lucy, as you read what she presented,
Yeah.
and I thought everything she said was absolutely spot on. In other words, quite apart from the speeding issue, so that if you had traffic that was forced to detour around through
Woodbury.
Woodbury. You know, first of all, that's a private road, and so I don't know how I mean, there'd be a ton of traffic going through there. And secondly, since I'm an insomniac, and I'm regularly up between 2 and 4 in the morning, there's zero traffic between 2 and 4. So I don't know what this particular graph is, but I would say it's inaccurate. Although I understand that's really irrelevant. The relevant part, I think, is twofold. I noticed that people had to slow significantly when Victor just added less asphalt there to raise the curb, and I would suggest we would be better off putting money into raising the curb even higher and raising the sidewalks there. Also, where our house is actually at the junction of Gardner, Liberty, and where Union and Hussey sort of more or less intersect, there's almost no sidewalk there. There's none on our side. The sidewalk on the other side is minimal and has a telephone pole in it. We have several telephone poles that are in the sidewalks
It's a
on
really,
the street.
it's a really weird area down there.
Oh, yeah.
No one
totally.
knows where to go, where to walk, and
Right, and so we have pedestrians coming from all angles, you know, a lot of them in the road. The one thing I've never seen a car act irresponsibly towards pedestrians on the sidewalk up towards the monument. So for cars that go on the sidewalk, and a lot of them do, and especially a lot of trucks, cars tend to slow. If there are pedestrians there, people would just stop and wait until cars or trucks had filtered through. So I don't think pedestrians are at risk at the top there. But anyway, so I've said my piece and Lucy's said her piece.
Yep.
You know,
I mean, personally, I don't love the idea. I think there would be some improvements, but I think there'd be some disadvantages too. Sergeant, you don't love having the bike way together, right, going against traffic. That was your
yeah.
issue, right?
This contraflow concept,
Right. I
you
think,
didn't like that at all?
right, having bikes going kind of both, right, against traffic.
Okay, so we'd never do that when if we proposed making Pleasant Street one way, we'd never propose something like that.
I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
How would you get your hands around, first off, we all know it's really broken. I mean, it's amazing to me the number of people pull up on the sidewalk to let cars go by. But how do you get your hands around what the real impact's gonna be to traffic flow if you make that street one way? I know we can say what street they'll go on, but how do we get our hands wrapped around how big a change that street would be going only one way?
You can model it. When we had the comp plan 25 years ago, they'd put the cars on and through the streets, and you could change it, and it would model kind of where they would go.
I mean, you take the graph, you look at the number of cars, so, you know, a number of those cars have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
The
Right.
southbound ones, I mean, it's the most, you have 90 at around lunchtime that would go in different directions. When we did the downtown traffic study, we did intersection counts at, I think it was 16 different intersections.
Yep.
And that's the best data that we have. That was collected in the middle of summer. That's probably a good representation of just how many cars try to get out of town.
So you could split those based on that data. If there's 90 cars, you could say, okay, X% go down this road already.
And it's a guesstimate, it's a
Yeah,
flag
big-
estimate.
A big estimate, but you know,
Yeah.
you could split them to the 3 or 4 nearest roads
Yeah.
and get an idea.
But in practice, Matt, you're going to be sending them either through town,
Yeah.
which is already completely jammed in
Yeah.
the summer, or you're going to be sending them through Woodbury and then get jammed up at the Nantucket Road intersection
Yeah.
through that. So I think that is another practical reason why it's probably not a good idea.
Would it push people through, I don't know the name of the road, is it Franklin, Grant?
Yep.
Right after Woodbury, so you pass Woodbury on your left, right, what's that, it's not a very big road, you know,
Oh, that little cut through street.
that would be a cut
To
through
get over
right,
the new
to
lane, to get over
to get
the new
around.
lane.
That might be Franklin.
Franklin.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a regular commuter on this street, both coming into town. It's my main way to come out of town to get to Milk Street. I think for a lot of people, it's one of the ways to get out of town to get to Milk Street in the Cisco Bartlett Farm area. So, I mean, since I saw this first concept of going one way, I think about it every time I go through there. I think it currently sucks for pedestrians because the cars just blow up on the sidewalk now. They don't even slow down. I have opportunities to drive a small rental car, so I get intimidated by big cars that just come right at me. And I also drive a big Jeep, and I get people looking at me like, you're supposed to go up on the sidewalk. And so one way I think would be good for getting people off the sidewalk. Like they're driving on the sidewalk like it's part of the road. It's just part of the road to drive on the sidewalk.
Around that tree, it is expected that you just use the sidewalk.
That being said, my God, you can go fast on that road into town. This winter I tried a couple times. It's pretty easy to get over 30 going into town on that road in the winter when there's no traffic. And when that's one way going into town, you're definitely gonna wanna have some type of speed calming thing. And I'm gonna take my bigger trucks there now. I'm gonna take a much bigger truck on that road. Cause if I'm a regular truck driver around here, I'm not going on that road with my big truck. But when it's one way, I'm taking the big truck. So we're gonna have bigger vehicles, I think potentially going faster. And then if you're heading into town one way and on the left is a two-way bike lane, that could be dynamic.
But
I
so,
mean-
if I may, I think this brings me back to my point, that, you know, a real alternative would be to raise the sidewalk sufficiently so that people won't be coming up onto the sidewalk.
But the reality of the sidewalk, there is gonna be the oil truck, there is gonna be the garbage truck, there is gonna be the occasionally delivery or fire truck, and there are roads where you gotta pull off onto the sidewalk.
Right, but for that casual, I mean, some of the curbstones there are only an inch or two high.
And you can
I mean,
just hit it
that's
without
why
even
it's
slowing
treated
down.
that way.
It's changed though. 15 years ago, we had the same problem, and you went out of your way not to drive on the sidewalk unless you had to. Now, to your point, it's expected, get off the road and pull on the sidewalk. It's expected.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Well, I can tell you what happened. We stopped enforcing no parking on sidewalks. You know, we had I think it was this group, no, traffic safety, went around and measured everything. We had a policy, and when we first go around 15 years ago, you could park one wheel up on two roads. You got one of them is here. What's that one? One next
York
to
Street.
York Street was one, and there was one other. And there was no parking on any of the sidewalks anywhere. And we enforced that for a year or two, and then we stopped enforcing it. And so when I got back elected, I went and saw the chief. I said, geez, you know, what's the policy now? What policy? No one knew what it was. I said, well, that was our policy. I gave him a copy. That was our policy. Well, we can't enforce that. It has to be the same. So basically, we just sort of looked the other way, and every single sidewalk is ruined. So the question is, you know, we have to figure out how, you know, so that's what's happened. It just became part of the culture. Instead of saying no to people, we just said, oh, well, trucks are bigger, and they used to deliver the food trucks. Stephen Beating was the first one that went with one of the big trucks with a big back on it. Prior to that, they were all Sun Island size, you know, Cape Cod Express size. And when one big truck went, then they all started to want to come. So that wasn't a problem we had 20 years ago downtown with the humongous trucks. That's a recent problem because we haven't enforced it again. So I think there's issues like that. Have you guys talked about turning streets like this into shared streets? You know, putting a different, you know, some sort of different material and allowing people, cars still to park if it's appropriate, or people and walkers and cars all to use it equally. Like, has that been discussed?
Yes,
No.
it was, well, briefly, it was discussed, in fact, for Gardner to actually do away with the sidewalk, right? And to make it just a single surface.
Will it all be like just red brick, just
Right. And so-
facade to facade, brick, the whole thing?
And
And
then I
then-
think there was a feeling that sort of petered out. But I take your point. I mean, again, Matt, I mean, SUVs, every year they get wider and larger, and of course, a percentage of the people who come here are not used to driving on narrow streets.
No, it's not just the people that come here, it's us. It's the Islanders are just
Yeah.
as bad. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
with the size of the cars and expecting that they could park and lock people in their houses, I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Right.
But
If you take this one street at a time though, Gardner Street, with the, have we analyzed developing a significant route improvement before you went one way? So top of my head, only New Lane, is it New Lane or New Street? I always get them backwards, town, out of town.
Street,
In town is street.
yeah, and then lane is out in Wisconsin.
And widening that street significantly, is there land possibility to widen that street so it works really well for two-way traffic before you close Gardner? Because a lot of people are coming from Cliff Road and wanna get over there and end up on Gardner, but if New Lane was a real well thought out street and wide enough with a plan, you know, to cross over even further out of town. Have we looked at maybe developing those options before we move to Gardner being one way?
I could say that, you know, Washington Street's absolutely an exit out of town, and that a lot of those intersections to make it, you know, have been fixed along Washington Street, you know, at Union and then at Orange. So in that direction, yes, but not west of town. Other than striping actually a double yellow center line on New Street, which I think it's all faded out now, but that was something we added just to avoid head-on collisions going around that bend. It's an interesting point, you know, if this is gonna be done, you know, look at 2, 3, 4 other options of other improvements that would need to be done.
Give people good options before you force them to pick an option.
Mhm.
It's just a concept to think about, that was all.
One thing I wanted to throw out there, in the shoulder seasons, when I have bike tours, sometimes I'll go up Gardner. If it's a smaller group and they're up towards the Civil War Monument. And since we've been talking about this last year or so, when there's sometimes where cars are just coming down towards me, right? And I'm coming up, it feels like it's a one-way. It's almost like what we are proposing. So I'm coming up, I got 3 people behind me, we're coming up Gardner Street, got the little fire horse cart station to my right, and one car's coming through, and it's fine. So when I think about it that way, it's not the end of the world scary to have bicycles going both ways and have the cars coming one way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost the same thing,
Yeah.
assuming everybody was just coming into town, and I'm coming up.
Yeah.
But as soon as the season starts, my guys are forbidden to go up Gardner Street.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, I use Gardner Street 4 times a week.
Right.
Biking up to the rotary to bike out to Wisconsin. It's the only street that I feel relatively safe on. On Orange Street, I get so many near misses. Then on the Pulpus Road and on Nantucket Road, I get people pulling out of their driveways and saying, "What the hell are you doing?" You know, to me, and as they sort of narrowly miss me. This is the one street where everybody gives me a wide berth. Going up the hill, people behind me give me a wide
If they
berth.
have to.
Well, but you know, people just zip right past me on Orange Street, you know, I mean, so it's.
So maybe you're making the case that
Because
it would
Orange
be
Street
really
doesn't get the
good for
traffic
one way
this
for
way, does it?
bicyclists.
No, the reason why I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with
I
you.
think this is
I
actually
understand,
less traffic. I'd have to go back.
Yeah,
you know,
but
that there are different
it
points
doesn't
of
ever
view
seem
here.
like
What
it's
I'm
that busy.
saying is already people go so
Coming off the
fast
main.
down that
Yeah.
street
I haven't
during the
counted. I have to
summer
go
when
check.
Yeah,
there's
be a
lots
mess to see.
of traffic
Right.
coming towards them.
'Cause it's
They'll just
downhill
go-
and-
Yeah, they'll just go faster, and so we absolutely, I think we need speed bumps in there anyway. And, you know, our ceiling is starting to crack in our library because just of the heavy traffic coming through. So
That's because it's 300 years old. Sorry. Nice try. So if it was up to you, Kevin, would you just say like, no, I could, public safety wise, I couldn't.
Before you answer that, go back to the picture for a minute, I wanna ask Kevin a question. If,
Put
You're
him on
getting
the
set up
spot.
here.
no, he's not. If this was a shared way and it turned out to be more like 12 feet wide and there was only one lane of traffic, would that make you more comfortable? So there's a narrower, well, not much narrower, this stays, you have a 12-foot lane, and this is a little bit like what you see at Stop and Shop, which is a shared lane, shared space that I'm hoping keeps drivers moving slow because they fare narrow. Would you be more comfortable if it was wider and had?
The issue isn't about comfort, the issue is it's against the law. You can't ride your bike down a one-way street the wrong way. And we are dealing with a multitude of issues in the downtown area of just that. And so India Street's a one-way, but bicyclists always go down India Street the wrong way,
Yep.
pull and complain. And now we're telling them that on Gardner Street, it's okay to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only street.
Within the contraflow.
Got it.
Why didn't you say that in the beginning? We could have closed this.
So I think
Got
I
it.
like the idea of a shared road.
And I think if you mark those differently, if you said that, you know, like and I wouldn't do like cobblestones, I would do like yellow pavers on Main Street or something. You'd have to say, you'd have to make people, you couldn't just do brick, because then everyone thinks you could drive on brick wherever you see it. You'd have to do something flat, which is what they think now. You know, and then I talked to DPW, I talked to Rob. Oh yeah, well, we're putting these sidewalks in stronger. They're gonna last now. Cars can go right over them and they're gonna last. And I'm like, Rob, I'll bet you a beer they don't. You know, I think the amount of abuse those sidewalks take with the trucks and stuff driving on them and over them and up them, I just think, I'll be shocked if those things last more than a couple of years.
Even if they do, there's a philosophical belief, right? Do any of us really believe sidewalks were put in so that cars could pull up on them because it's annoying to wait for someone else to move or use some better judgment?
That doesn't
I
happen until
understand
you're
at
elected
times-
to the
I
planning
completely
board.
understand at times we all have to, but it went from marginally acceptable to the expectation. And I just don't know when that happened. And I know you're saying but it's something bigger than that.
Oh, it is, but it's the size of the cars, it's the whole thing.
I mean, at this point, it's just a nuisance to have the sidewalks there, especially on, not Dover, what's the other one? York. They serve no purpose.
Yeah.
They serve no purpose at all.
They're
being
for
there.
parking.
Because parking. So,
But you could, if you did a shared street, you could still park there, but the expectation would be, hey, if someone's walking with a carriage, you've gotta take your time behind them with a car.
right.
You know, or they'd walk until they could tuck in and then you'd go by. I mean, I just think that somehow, if we're gonna prioritize, if we're gonna get people out of their cars, we have to prioritize the other options, biking and walking. We have to make it safe and easier, myself.
There's just some roads you're never gonna make wide enough.
Yeah, so then we do something different with it.
Yep.
It's just an idea. Do you want to keep floating on this? I'm just keeping an eye on the clock
Yep.
because I know Concom's going to.
Yep, we gotta move here quick. Yep.
Where is this Gardner Street idea going? Where does it go from here? Does traffic safety look at it? Who else looks at it?
You identified some points, you know, discussion of speeding and speed humps, because that's still a concern. Discussion of other exit options, like a new lane, street, identify those, and,
I think it wouldn't hurt for us to develop a very simple design to demonstrate to people it could be a shared way if you were to go to one. Because width for this to work with 2-lane bike traffic is critical to making sure that the space for them is wider than just, 3 feet.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a chance to really explore shared surfaces,
okay.
just my opinion. I'm not even a vote.
Yeah. Jason, do you want to maybe assign some of these as like smaller projects that maybe Ian or Matt or Dave or somebody maybe want to investigate smaller, and we just keep this as like a rolling item on the agenda? I'm just spitballing ideas here, but if there's an idea of speed, maybe there's just, because Ian obviously is a stakeholder in this, he lives in the neighborhood. Maybe is there an option that he would be happy with, or do you want to just keep it on just for discussion, or maybe float some of these other ideas that are can mitigate
Can I
concerns?
offer the following? I'd offer 3 things. I think it's reasonable to ask Rob McNeil to come to the next meeting and discuss with us the potential of adding some type of speed platform, bump, whatever, and what he would see as the issues and the timing of getting those installed or tested, right? But they can put down temporary ones and test them. There are things they can do. And then the second is that we also talked to Rob about exploring what a design might look like with more of a shared way. And those are 2 deliverables, and other than that, we hold this as an open item, because I'm not ready to vote for it to be one way personally.
I wouldn't.
No, I think there's more.
Okay.
Thinking it through.
Adding on that, how about actually putting something that monitors the speed there, so we get a concept of how fast people are actually going down there?
I
I mean,
don't,
I
how do we do that?
really think that, every day I see people
Are you-
going over 40 miles an hour past my window,
Is it an Angus question,
so.
Kevin?
Yes.
That was hesitation.
Try to see how high I can get that to
Two
go.
wires across the road that monitor the actual speed of the vehicle, so you're not telling people to slow down, you're actually monitoring how fast they're going.
We could do a radar gun and just stand out there have a CSO stand out there. That's what we've done in the past.
You can lend it to me and I'll take it up there.
I thought you were talking about the speed trailer, like parking the speed trailer or something out there to let people know how fast they're going, but I don't know if
I don't know
that's.
if there's enough room.
I think he's
Yeah,
talking
it's
about
People see
undercover.
that, they like,
They s-
slam on the brakes, and
Yeah.
that's not,
Or someone try to see how high they can get it to go.
or that too.
There's a theme with you, Harvey.
Make it blink red, you have to get it to blink red.
All right, so we'll put this on an ongoing And you and I think we'll just talk about what our other options are
Yeah,
after this. I've written everything down, you've written it down.
yeah.
And if you're gonna do a shared street, we should pick one that would be really popular and solve something and then prove it.
Yeah.
You know, like find one, and maybe this isn't the one, because it's too busy, maybe it's Liberty Street, or maybe it's, you know, one of these others that York or New or whatever, maybe it's.
I like Chestnut personally, and I don't say that lightly, because actually it's a limited number of cars impacted. It's 11 cars versus that are eliminated, and it should by nature be a major link between Center Street and downtown, and it doesn't happen. And I think it's because there's no clear path to get from Center Street, because everyone parks on the sidewalks. So they either go down Broad or down Main, and no one wants to cut through. And I just always look at that street and
Well,
say, God.
Chestnut's just coming up now, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm saying that would be a street I would make a shared path. I would just open it all up
Well,
and
it's
say.
part of the recommended bike route to get out of town,
Yeah.
going out that way.
Okay.
I walk downtown every day,
Chestnut.
so of course I like it, but what a shame.
Okay.
So we're talking about is having some different options of shared streets to prove that
I'm just trying to
it
think
can
where
work.
Chestnut was when I was like, oh,
Chestnut, they
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have a
Flowers on
sidewalk.
Chestnut.
yeah,
Which
I-
we could use. People aren't pulling up on that sidewalk.
became
On
clear for a
Chestnut?
second.
I walk it every night.
Off the top.
And cars are parked on Chestnut now?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, see, those are the kind of places like Matt said, there's no reason, that street is plenty wide enough
It
to
is.
park.
Yeah, and it's only
leave the
one-way
sidewalk,
traffic.
And it's
Yeah.
one way for the delivery truck, trucks can go up that road.
Mhm.
But I think once people start parking on the sidewalk, they just think, well, let's park on the sidewalk.
Well, the same thing is at the bottom of Center Street across from American Seasons. People park like on the sidewalks from there all the way up the hill.
There's
There's
plenty
no
of
reason to
room.
park there.
Right,
Yeah.
where it's one way, there isn't. But, I mean, that brings us back to actually Hussey Street, as you're coming out of Center Street. That's a pretty narrow street.
Yeah.
So if people didn't park on the sidewalk there.
Couldn't get by.
You couldn't get by, and so.
Hussey is a perfect shared street.
Yeah.
Hussey's perfect. The cars could still park on the side
Yeah.
within a certain line.
Yeah.
You know, you'd say,
Yeah.
okay, here's your line, you have to park here. You know, you'd have a different colored brick or something, and the rest of it, people walk down the middle.
Right.
And that would be a perfect one to do.
Yeah.
Let's bring back some options
Okay.
next meeting. Do we want to move on to York Street?
Yes. Let's just talk about the sidewalk.
This is on
Has
traf-
no purpose.
Right, this is on traffic safety tomorrow at 10:30. I can't go, I got another meeting, but I'm interested to go. A couple residents came and nicely cornered me at the coffee shop, but I talked to them for a while. And it was mostly about the buses, no buses, no buses, no buses. But then I said, well, what do you think about, they were saying that all the cars get hit, nobody can walk down there. I said, I have the perfect solution for you. They're like, what? I said, no parking on York Street. They're like, whoa, where are,
Where are we gonna park?
well, I said, does everybody have, I said, can you go down York Street for me and make sure every house has their own parking off-street? And they said, everybody has it. I said, well, who's parking there? I said, well, the renters. People renting out their basements, rooms, I get why they have to do that. But what about no parking on York Street? Bike path coming out,
Every time I drive it now, I try to look at the cars that are parked and then look at the driveways, and maybe it's risky doing that because it's very tight to navigate. But I do try to look at the driveways, especially the ones on the left, and see if there's any cars in there. I think it's just an overburdened area where every room has somebody with a vehicle that sleeps in that bedroom. I think, it's not like 3 cars per dwelling kind of a thing. There's probably 5 people living in some of these houses, and every one of them has their own vehicle. It's really, really overburdened.
so is it 14.5 feet all the way up, or does it get narrow a little bit?
I think this
halfway
is the
up?
narrowest section.
That's the narrowest section?
I want to say
Okay.
that one actually is. But yeah, that's a decent goal. I'm 17 feet, 17 and a half.
I don't think this would be popular to people living there at all, but is it, there's no, I look at this more now because I'm rolling Eloise around everywhere on the stroller, and I can't go up York Street. I could, but I don't really want to be in the middle of the road.
So just out of curiosity, I'm staring at that picture. How many parking spaces you're talking about? Looks to me like 1, 2, 3, 4,
12?
5.
Yeah, I thought it was
Is it
12.
Is it 12 you counted it?
3,
Okay.
I did actually.
4, 5. Wow. Yeah, about 12.
I think it's 12-ish.
Which is significant,
It is.
but I'd say take the sidewalk out of here.
Take the sidewalk out.
Just don't have the sidewalk.
No one's using the sidewalk, guys.
Nobody
right?
can.
Yeah.
Well, But would they use it if they could? It seems like when you have a better sidewalk, people use it and walk.
And bicyclists are all the time going up and down this road, that you can see them like getting out of the flow to let cars go and then getting back into the
Right.
traffic lane. I
Right.
mean, I think everybody juggles it,
Yeah.
especially the
But the
buses.
question is, where are those 12 people gonna park as well? So as opposed to shared space, so that you actually get the dynamic where they can park and you can walk in the center of the street, or where are they gonna park?
I would say you overburden the Center Street lot, if a lot of people park there. Orange Street would be one of the options, but, you know, there's already people parking on Orange Street, which there might be some availability. There are options. There are places to park on street, you know, around, just not right in front of your house.
And this is not wide enough, if the black truck up there were parked against the curb and this car were parked against the curb, that makes it too tight for.
No, not for emergency
For the
vehicles or
NRTA bus and that
NERDA.
kind of
Well, say it's 14 feet from what the drawing said, mine is 6.5 feet for a car, yeah, so.
So, yeah,
So the options here are take the sidewalk
What
out
you say if you didn't park on the
Right.
sidewalk?
and have parking,
Mhm.
or have no parking and improve the sidewalks.
Exactly.
Right, I mean, you'd have to put money in those sidewalks at some point.
So
It would be a
every-
waste if it wouldn't use them. You can't use them, we just discussed, we just said that.
I'm saying the two options, you would have no parking at all, improve the sidewalk so it's used,
Right.
or take the sidewalk out. Are those the two options? Sorry.
It's really an interesting, and I say this because I did it to my children, so, you know, in their deed, they're limited to 2 parking spaces. There's no parking on the little street that we put in. You have 2 spaces, that's it. You don't like it, get rid of your car. My son-in-law had just rented a garage because he can't fit his cars, and I said, that's your problem, not mine. But, you know, at what point does the community ask, and by the way, we don't have to answer this today, but, you know, just as the bastard that I am, to my own children, I put in the deed, they're limited to the number of cars on the property.
So parallel to this is Dover. Dover comes down, this one goes up, and there's no parking on Dover, there's no sidewalks
Jason,
on
sorry, not to
Dover.
cut you short, we're gonna get kicked out of here pretty soon.
Yep, we have 8 minutes.
There's no parking on Dover,
I think we have 4
which is right
minutes.
parallel to
Four?
That's
this.
behind you.
Oh,
Dover
I
comes
think,
in,
oh, yeah.
this one goes out, maybe this wouldn't hurt to have no parking, but I don't live
Okay.
there and I'm not parking there, so.
You're right.
But I think, Dave, you make a good point of, you know, sort of, do we just continue to like increase the number of cars parking because more people are down there? You know, if we had.
When did it become the island's problem versus the person
This,
renting?
there
the
was
room?
I think we heard there were
That's the only
350
question I was
more
starting to
cars
ask.
in February, you know, on the island, 350 more registered on the island in February. So that means we're gonna have, what, 500 more this summer? Does that, you know, do we just keep adding 500 cars every year and think that we're gonna solve it by, you
Making
know?
more room for 'em.
Yeah, by allowing more of them to park on the sidewalks or to drive faster? I think we have to solve it a different way.
all right. So why don't we all walk York and Gardner, come, you know, and we'll come back, you know, everything that we talked about today for the next agenda.
Yeah.
Anything else, last minute, Mike, we need to think about, watch, read?
May 29th, there's the J1 bike safety courses. Is anyone involved with that? Kyle Bonus had asked if there was, I don't know if she's been in touch with you, Harvey. I don't know, Kevin, if she's been in touch with you at all.
Is this for the J1 students?
She's working with Keith Mansfield, the school resource officer.
Keith Mansfield?
And Mike, don't you have, is it tomorrow you have a meeting on the rotaries?
Yes, tomorrow, 6 o'clock, high school cafeteria, 3 roundabouts. We're selling this as a safety improvement as well as a more efficient processing of vehicles, but safer for all modes. If you have a take on that, please come and say that you think these are good for bicyclists and pedestrians.
Do we anticipate getting some markings for bikes at the intersection of Francis and Washington? And I see
Yes.
a lot of bikes coming into town, they have no idea they can turn and take a bike path.
I know.
Is
I've
that
seen it.
coming soon?
It's supposed to be before Memorial Day
Okay,
weekend,
cool.
but
Yeah,
wait and see.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'll ask them, Alice,
Yeah.
just before the meeting, and we'll see if it's on
I'm gonna
the.
start pushing bikes out.
No real updates, I don't guess. We did update somewhat with the announcements, but approval of minutes.
Motion made, second.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Okay.
That passes. Thank you.
This is an easy